So there's a thing basically every House of the Dragon viewer agrees on. Team Black or Team Green. Doesn't matter. Rhaenyra has the better claim. Her father named her. Publicly. The lords knelt. The oaths got sworn. It's on the record. By the law of the realm, the throne is hers. Even the show doesn't really argue with this. And here's the thing. Being right hasn't won her a single week of this war. She keeps losing. Allies, dragons, ground, momentum, to people whose claim is, let's be honest, paperwork held together with a funeral and a fast coronation. And for the longest time I filed that under, well, war's unfair, until I reread a book that has nothing to do with Westeros, and it stopped being a coincidence. 500 years ago, a tired out-of-work civil servant from Florence, Niccolo Machiavelli, wrote a short manual about exactly one situation. What happens to a new ruler whose right to rule is real but not yet accepted? Her situation. Literally hers. And when you put that manual next to this show, something uncomfortable starts happening. Every choice the show frames as Rhaenyra's goodness, the manual quietly files as the reason the realm is burning. And the show knows all this, by the way. There's a scene in the season 1 finale, her war council, around the painted table, where her own husband leans in close and says the entire thesis of this video to her face, in 7 words. We'll get there. Keep your ear out for it. So that's the video. And quick ground rule before anyone types it. This is not Rhaenyra should be more evil. That's the lazy take. And honestly, the manual doesn't even say that. It says something worse. That being right and being effective are 2 different jobs. She keeps showing up to the wrong one. Let me walk you through it. Okay, first, 30 seconds on Machiavelli. Because honestly, the pop culture version is garbage. People use Machiavellian to mean cartoonishly evil. That's not the book. The Prince is basically a job manual for one very specific, very bad situation. You are a new ruler, your power isn't settled yet, and everyone around you is deciding whether to obey you or replace you. For that situation, he has a few blunt rules. Rule 1, Virtu beats Fortuna. Fortuna is luck. Everything that happens to you, your birth, your inheritance, who your father was. Virtu is what you do. Skill, nerve, timing, the willingness to act before the moment closes. Machiavelli's whole point is that fortune hands you the crown, but only Virtu keeps it on your head. He has this image of fortune as a river. It floods. You can't stop the flood, but a capable ruler builds the dams in advance, in peacetime, before the water comes. Rule 2, the famous one. If you can't be both, it is safer to be feared than loved, not hated. Feared. Because love is a debt other people can cancel whenever it gets expensive, and fear is a debt they pay on time. Rule 3, you've probably heard this. The lion and the fox. Force alone gets trapped. Cunning alone gets eaten. You need both animals in one ruler. Rule 4, and this is the one people skip. A prince must learn how not to be good. Not be evil. Learn the ability, keep it holstered, and use it when necessity says so. Goodness as a default setting, he says, gets a ruler destroyed by the people who don't share it. Oh, and one more thing about the man himself, because it matters for tone. Machiavelli wasn't some armchair cynic sneering at idealists. He lost. He served the Florentine Republic, the Republic fell, the Medici tortured him and kicked him out to a farm, and he wrote The Prince in exile, at night, in his good clothes, basically begging for a job. The manual is a loser's book about why the good guys lose. Keep that in your pocket. It's going to rhyme. And the sin he keeps circling back to, the one he treats as basically fatal for a new ruler, indecision, standing in the middle, waiting to be told the answer is legitimate. He watched Italian princes die of that specific disease, so, he took notes. Hold those 5 things. Keep them in one hand. Now watch Rhaenyra. Everything Rhaenyra has stands on a single word. Legitimacy. Her father named her heir. Publicly. Made half the realm kneel and swear it.
Rhaenyra Targaryen, Princess of Dragonstone, and heir to the Iron Throne.
That's real. That actually happened. On the throne, in front of the court. The lords bent the knee, said the words, and in her head, reasonably, that settled it. The throne is hers by right, so ruling should be a matter of collecting what's owed. And look at how she behaves once the war starts, because it's remarkably consistent. She hesitates, she takes counsel, then more counsel. She sends terms. She holds her dragons back. She is terrified, Her word choices say it over and over, of being the aggressor, of burning the realm she's supposed to rule.
I do not wish to rule over a kingdom of ash and bone.
The show frames all of this as her humanity, and it is humanity. I'm not going to stand here and pretend restraint is a character flaw in a person, but she's not applying for person, she's applying for monarch in an unsettled succession, which is precisely Machiavelli's one very bad situation. Fortuna gave her the crown, her father's choice, an inheritance, luck, and she keeps waiting for Fortuna to also deliver the obedience. The river is flooding, and she's holding up the paperwork that says the river isn't allowed to. And the river metaphor isn't me being pretty. Walk the timeline. She had years between being named heir and the succession. Years to salt the small council with her people, instead of watching Otto salt it with his. Years to lock the Valerian fleet, the Vale, the North, into something harder than politeness. The oaths she finally collects in Season 1, Episode 10, in a panic, in a week, were collectible at leisure for a decade. That's the dam building Machiavelli is talking about. You don't negotiate with the flood, you pour concrete in summer. She spent her summers being right. And if you want one scene, one, where the whole disease is visible on screen, it's the end of that same finale. Her big move, after the usurpation, after the council begs for orders. She sends her sons out as envoys, the decent move, the lawful move. Watch the scene. Luke gets a letter, a blessing, and a flight plan to Storm's End, and he comes back in pieces. Her restraint didn't prevent the war. It hand-delivered the first casualty, and it was her kid. That's not me being cruel. That's the show's own math. The one time being right got tested against weather. A boy died holding the paperwork. Now flip the board, because, look, the Greens play the other strategy, and the show is almost rude about how clearly it stages this. Viserys dies in the night. Before the body is cold, the small council is in a candlelit room deciding the succession. Not debating whether to act, debating how fast.
Am I to understand that members of the small council have been planning secretly to install my son without me?
That's the whole doctrine in one scene. Don't wait for the right to arrive, act, and make the right afterwards. Aegon is crowned in front of a crowd before Rhaenyra even hears her father is dead. Was it legal? I mean, barely, arguably, no. Did it work? He sat on the throne, and actually watched the coronation crowd for a second. The small folk faces in the dragon pit. That's not love. That's attendance. Fear fills a room faster than loyalty, and the show photographs the difference. Machiavelli shrugs. A title you can't enforce is a poem. And look at the cast they field, because it maps almost embarrassingly well. Otto is the fox. Decades of quiet positioning, a granddaughter here, a council seat there, and when the moment opens, he walks through it without a wasted step. Aemond is the lion, the kid who solved "we lost a dragon" by walking up to the biggest living dragon on the planet and taking her, at 10ish, because force creates facts.
It was a fair exchange. I may have lost an eye, but I gained a dragon.
An eye for Vagar, and he calls it a fair trade. That's not a villain line. That's an accounting line. And Kristen Cole in Season 2 stops fighting like a knight and starts fighting like a poacher. Feints, night marches, the trap at Rook's Rest. Lion, fox, and a man willing to not be good. It's the full toolkit. The claim is garbage. The game is excellent. Rhaenyra has the exact opposite problem. Better claim, worse game. Say it with me because it's the refrain of this entire war, and we're not done hearing it. And here's the part that makes this a video and not a stretch, okay? You don't have to import Machiavelli into House of the Dragon. The writers already built him in. He's standing next to Rhaenyra the entire time, and his name is Daemon. Every fight Rhaenyra and Daemon have is the same fight. She argues legitimacy. The throne is mine by right, by my father's word, and I will not stain it taking it. He argues virtu. The throne belongs to whoever acts. He says the quiet doctrine right out loud in the finale of Season 1, and it might be the most Machiavellian sentence in the whole show.
Dreams didn't make us kings. Dragons did.
And here's what makes it brutal. That's the same council scene. 2 minutes earlier, she said the ash and bone line. Same room, same night. 2 operating systems answering one question. Sit with his line for a second. Dreams, prophecy, right, the promise of Viserys, the whole paper structure of her claim didn't make this family royal. Dragons did. Power did. Enforcement did. That is, The Prince compressed into 7 words, delivered by her own husband, and the show has him say it while she's mid-refusal to start the war. And notice what the show does with these two. It doesn't crown either argument. It marries them. It locks legitimacy and virtue in one bedroom and lets them tear at each other for 2 seasons. She pulls him back. He slips the leash. He goes to Harrenhal and starts doing awful effective things in her name that she never ordered. A son for a son happens because her instrument acted while she deliberated. Her war crimes get committed by proxy, without her consent, because, and this is the bitter Machiavelli joke, she outsourced her virtue. She kept her hands clean by putting the knife in someone else's. He is her ability to not be good, walking around off the chain. And a ruler who has to subcontract that ability doesn't control it. That's not me being clever. That's literally the plot. So there's this specific chapter of The Prince that basically reads like a House of the Dragon recap, and I need you to hear it because this is where the parallel stops being cute and starts being surgical. Machiavelli's favorite case study, his model prince, is Cesare Borgia. 2 things about Borgia, and I'm giving you the darker one first. Thing 1, the dark one. Machiavelli asks, why did Borgia, his best student, still lose everything in the end? And his answer is brutal. Because Borgia's whole position was built on his father. Pope Alexander VI borrowed power, fortuna in its purest form. The day the Pope died, the son's empire evaporated, because it had never been his. It was a lease on another man's life. Now say that about Rhaenyra out loud. Her entire claim was a lease on Viserys's breath. Every lord who knelt to his word, and she spent 20 years assuming the word would outlive the man. It didn't survive the night. The manual's verdict on Borgia is the verdict on her. Whoever builds on fortune's foundations falls when fortune moves, and a father is fortune no matter how much he loved you. Thing 2. When Borgia took the Romagna, the region was lawless, so he installed a deputy, Ramiro Darko, a cruel, efficient man, and let him do the ugly work of pacifying it. And when the cruelty had done its job, and the people's hatred started pooling around the throne, Borgia had Ramiro executed and displayed in the town square, cut in 2. The hatred died with the deputy. Clean hands, wet knife, and the knife takes the blame. Now, who is that in this show? A ruler who keeps her honor spotless, while her dangerous, deniable instrument does the unspeakable parts. That arrangement has a name in Westeros, and she married it. The difference, and it's the whole difference, is that Borgia controlled his knife, commissioned the cruelty, timed it, ended it. Rhaenyra's knife freelances. Blood and cheese is Ramiro Darko acting without orders. All of the hatred, none of the strategy, and she gets the bill without ever getting the benefit. And put the 2 things side by side, because together they are her war. The claim came from the father. The knife wouldn't take orders. Better claim, worse game. Borgia's chapter, her biography. Now, because if Machiavelli were just Daemon is right, the show would be a lecture and Daemon would be winning. He isn't. Look at his season 2. He takes Harrenhal, bold, decisive, textbook virtue, and then spends half a season losing an argument with the haunted castle. The river lords don't rally to him. The knights he courts hedge. Why? He's terrifying and nobody doubts his nerve. So what's missing? Legitimacy, the exact thing he mocks. Lords will die for a rightful queen, and sure, they'll fear a dangerous prince, but fear without a claim behind it reads as banditry. And Machiavelli says that too. The feared ruler still needs to not be hated, still needs the title to hang the fear on. Daemon with a crown argument is an army. Daemon freelancing is a warlord. And Westeros has a long memory for what you do to warlords eventually. So the full picture is symmetrical, and honestly, it's the smartest thing the writers do. Her claim without his teeth loses slowly. His teeth, without her claim, lose lonely. Machiavelli's actual demand, one person holding both, the lion, the fox, and the law, doesn't exist on this board. The show split the complete ruler into a married couple and made them fight about which half matters. That's the dance of the dragons in one sentence. A kingdom tearing itself apart between 2 halves of one competent monarch. Now do the exercise the show kind of quietly begs you not to do. Take her most sympathetic moments and read them through the manual. She refuses to strike first after the usurpation, sends envoys, sends terms. Machiavelli, a new ruler who lets the rival consolidate, has donated his advantage. The Greens use every one of those days to lock in lords, castles, and a coronation. She flies to King's Landing in Season 2, sneaks into the enemy capital in a Septa's robe to talk peace with Alicent, one woman to another. It's genuinely moving, right? And watch how small she plays it. A queen making herself narrow inside a borrowed Septa robe, whispering terms to the woman whose son took her throne. It's also her wagering the entire cause on the hope that the other side wants peace as much as she does. They don't. The Fox does not sign treaties during a winning streak.
It's too late, Rhaenyra.
And Criston Cole deserves his own sentence here, because Season 2 turns him into the Greens' proof of concept. The man does nothing honorable. He marches at night, takes castles by threat and theater, dangles Rook's Rest as bait knowing a dragon has to answer. And it works. Every step. The show's most despised character has the war's best win rate. And that's not sloppy writing. That's the thesis with a sword. Rook's Rest. The council needs a dragon in the air. She won't risk herself, fine. That part is actually sound. But the hesitation cascades, and it's Rhaenys who flies, and the Blacks lose a dragon. A fleet's worth of morale, and their scariest field asset in one afternoon of half-commitment. Machiavelli has a name for half-commitment, by the way. He calls it losing slowly. And if you think this disease is only Rhaenyra's, the show gave you a control group. Rhaenys, Episode 9. She's on Dragonback, in the Dragon Pit, facing the entire Green leadership at the coronation. One word in Valyrian and the war ends before it starts. She doesn't say it. She stares them down and flies away. The show plays it as dignity, and I get it, killing a crowd is monstrous. But watch what that mercy buys. Aegon stays crowned, the war happens anyway, and the same woman dies fighting that same family's dragons a season later at Rook's Rest. The kindness got deferred with interest, and the realm paid it. That's the pattern, and it's generational. The Blacks keep declining the ugly cheap move and getting invoiced the expensive one. And the Dragon Seeds, when she finally does something bold, recruiting common-born riders, look at how the show has her arrive there. Late, exhausted, pushed by losses, after the cheap versions of the same idea were available for half a season. Even her Veer 2 is reactive. The dams get built during the flood. Each one of these beats plays on screen as conscience, and each one run through the manual is the same entry. The new prince hesitated. The rival didn't. You don't need to invent a single scene. The show already shot the argument. It just scored it with sad music instead of alarm bells. And look, I want to be fair to her here, because the counter-argument exists, and it's not stupid. Rhaenyra does have Veer 2. Flashes of it. Real ones. The Dragon Seeds are a genuinely Machiavellian move, arming lowborn riders, breaking the class rules of dragon riding because necessity beats propriety. That's the Fox waking up. Sending Cregan Stark, her son, working the Vale, holding a fractious war council together with no husband and half a fleet. None of that is passive. The problem isn't that she has 0 moves. It's the exchange rate. Every bold move arrives, one disaster too late, priced by the loss that forced it. The Seeds come after she's short, 3 dragons, not before. The alliances firm up after the betrayals, not ahead of them. Machiavelli doesn't grade you on eventually. Fortuna's river doesn't wait for character growth. And there's a second counter worth saying out loud. Maybe the restraint is the long game. Maybe a queen who wins ugly rules a realm that never accepts her, and she knows it. It's a real argument. The show even makes it through her mouth. The Ashen Bone line is exactly this. But notice, the book already answered it. The ruler who won't do the ugly thing doesn't get the clean reign either. She gets the war anyway, longer, at somebody else's tempo. Half measures don't buy you innocence. They buy you both bills. So is the answer, Rhaenyra should just be more ruthless? No. God, no. And this is where the video earns its keep, because Machiavelli's darkest observation isn't about tactics. It's that the job of being a good person and the job of being an effective ruler can simply refuse to overlap. Not always. But in an unsettled succession, his exact scenario, her exact scenario, the overlap can go to 0. There's one more Machiavelli line hiding in this show, and it's the cruelest one. Feared versus loved, remember. Rhaenyra keeps banking on love, of the lords who swore, of the small folk, of the husband. And the show keeps quietly auditing those accounts. The sworn lords of Season 1, half of them shop for a better deal the moment Viserys is cold. The love was real when it was cheap. Fear, meanwhile, keeps embarrassingly good books. Nobody wavers around Aemond. I hate that this is true in the show. It is, though. Check the defection ledger by house and see which emotion held. Viserys spent his whole reign dreaming the two jobs were 1. Be decent, keep the peace, and the realm holds together out of gratitude. That dream is the actual inheritance he left her, more than the crown. And she's the only player on the board still trying to live it. Alicent already gave it up. Otto never had it. Daemon was born without the gene. That's the tragedy the show is actually writing, I think. And I mean tragedy in the boring structural sense, not good queen versus bad family. A woman holding two jobs that cancel each other, discovering it one funeral at a time. When she restrains the dragons, she's a good person and a worse ruler. When Daemon burns something, her cause gets stronger and her soul gets built. There is no move on the board that scores both columns. Machiavelli's real horror isn't that evil wins. It's that the columns are separate, and the show wants your sympathy pointed at her restraint. Last thing, and then I promise I'll let the Florentine rest. It's easy to say she plays badly and float away on vibes. So let's make it concrete the fun way. Put Otto Hightower on her side of the board. Same day. One position. Dead king, better claim, dragons ready. What does Otto do with her hand? Day 1. Otto strikes. Just speed. The single most repeated advice in the manual. Hit while the usurper's paint is wet. She had dragons mobile within days. A city that hadn't seen Aegon rule for an hour, lords still deciding. Otto doesn't fly envoys into that window, because he knows what every week of talking buys, her advantage converting into their consolidation. The window was real. She closed it politely. After blood and cheese, Otto runs the Borgia maneuver without blinking. The moment the realm starts pinning that horror on her cause, public, loud repudiation. Strip Daemon of command, in front of witnesses, let the hatred land on the instrument. Cruel? Sure. Daemon would have understood it, honestly. He's the one person in this story who reads that language natively. She absorbed the stain and kept the liability instead. Worst of both worlds, guilty in the realm's eyes, unrevenged in her own. And somewhere in month 1, Otto spends exactly one act of addressed fear. Not terror. Address. The manual's actual position is precision. Fear works when it's specific. Hatred arrives when it's random. One defecting lord, one castle, one demonstrative consequence, and the defection market reprices overnight. She kept mercy general and consequences theoretical. And the lords did what markets always do with theoretical consequences. The bitter joke, of course, Otto with her claim probably ends this war inside a year. The show dealt the best player the worst cards, and the best cards to the one player who refuses to look at them. And notice, none of this required her to become Aemond. That's the point the she should be eviler crowd misses and the manual doesn't. Machiavelli's ruler isn't cruel, he's legible. People can predict the cost of betraying him, so they don't. Rhaenyra's costs were unpredictable in the one direction that mattered, toward her enemies, and perfectly predictable in the other, toward herself. Read that sentence again, and you've read the war. So, yeah, she's right. That was never the question. The claim is hers. The word of the king, the oaths, the law, all of it, hers. And it doesn't matter, because a right you can't enforce is a letter nobody has to answer. And we've all watched, for 2 seasons, exactly who answers letters in Westeros and who answers dragons. Rhaenyra has the better claim and the worse game. The Greens have the worse claim and they read the manual. A civil servant from Florence, writing with a quill 500 years before this show aired, looked at exactly this matchup and put his money down. The fox and the lion beat the heir with the paperwork, every time. Unless the heir learns how not to be good. And the whole reason we love her is that she can't. Being right is a strategy for peacetime. Somebody should have told her which war she was in. One more honest beat before we land this, because somebody in the comments is going to say, "It's a fantasy show, man. Why are you reading a Renaissance bureaucrat at me?" Fair. Here's why. Because this exact argument, legitimacy versus effectiveness, is not a Westeros problem, it's a Tuesday problem. Every workplace has a Rhaenyra, the person who's right, provably right, right in writing, and keeps losing meetings to someone who just moves faster and apologizes never. Every family fight has one. That's why the dance works as a story, and honestly, that's why Machiavelli is still in print 500 years later, while nicer books about how power should work are not. He's describing the gap we all live in, between deserving a thing and getting it. The dragons are set dressing. The gap is the show. And the reason this stays with me, the reason I think the show is smarter than its discourse, is that it refuses to let either side be the lesson. It shows you the cost of her conscience in burned holdfasts, and the cost of their efficiency in what the Greens are becoming from the inside. Machiavelli tells you how to win the throne. He's got remarkably little to say about what's sitting on it afterwards. Maybe that's the real ending the dance is driving toward, a war where the manual's winners and the manual's losers arrive at the same pile of ash, from opposite directions, both technically correct. If you think I'm wrong, if you think her restraint is the actual long game and the realm will crown her because she didn't burn it, honestly, make that case in the comments. I want to read it. And if you want the other half of this argument, the man who is the manual with a heartbeat, I've got a whole video on the Quiet Lord grooming a spare king. Different house. Same book. See you in the next one.